The desert had a way of watching men die, and that morning it watched 5 young Apache girls sway gently beneath the burning sky, their bodies inverted, their long black hair hanging like dark rivers toward the dust. The ropes were tied to a thick cottonwood branch that creaked with every breath of wind, the knots rough and unforgiving, already biting into ankles swollen purple from the blood rushing downward. Flies circled their faces, bold and merciless, landing on cracked lips and tear-streaked cheeks. The girls had stopped screaming hours ago, not because hope had died, but because the sun had stolen their voices. Somewhere beyond the low hills, coyotes cried as if rehearsing for the feast they expected by nightfall. This was Arizona territory in the 1870s, where justice often came without trial. Mercy was a rumor, and survival belonged to those who arrived with a gun and left with a conscience intact. The men who had done this were already gone. Ranch hands, maybe vigilantes, maybe something worse. They had accused the girls of stealing a horse, though no horse had been found, no proof given, no questions asked. In this land, an accusation against Apache blood was all the evidence required. The men had laughed as they rode away, dust clouds swallowing their silhouettes, leaving 5 lives hanging between earth and sky, between death and a miracle that none of them truly believed would come. The eldest of the girls, Nalin, was 16, though the years had hardened her eyes beyond her age. She tried to focus on breathing, slow and measured, even as the world pulsed red and black around her vision. She remembered her mother's voice telling her that panic killed faster than hunger, faster than thirst. She whispered prayers in her mind, not to beg for survival, but to ask for strength to endure whatever came next. Beside her hung Ayana, only 14, her lips moving silently, eyes squeezed shut, as if she could will the desert away. The others, Kiona, Tala, and little Sani, drifted in and out of consciousness, their bodies trembling, muscles cramping, blood pooling painfully in their skulls. Time stretched cruelly. Minutes felt like hours. The sun climbed higher, indifferent and merciless, baking the ground until heat shimmered like a living thing. Each breath tasted of dust and despair. Death did not rush them. It took its time. Miles away, a lone rider cut across the plain, his horse moving with the steady confidence of long companionship. The man in the saddle was known as Eli Mercer, though few truly knew him at all. He was a rancher by trade, a survivor by necessity, and a man haunted by things he never spoke aloud. His ranch sat on the edge of Apache land, a dangerous place for a white man who refused to choose hatred as a shield. Eli had lost family to violence years earlier, not to Apache raids as many assumed, but to men who wore badges and carried rifles with righteous certainty. Since then, he trusted actions more than words, silence, more than slogans. That morning, he had ridden out early to check a broken fence line, unaware that fate had laid a different trail beneath his horse's hooves. It was the vultures that caught his eye first. They circled lazily, wide and patient, a sure sign of death or the promise of it. Eli narrowed his eyes against the sun, adjusting his hat, a familiar tightness forming in his chest. Vultures never lied. He urged his horse forward, the ground rising gently until the cottonwood came into view, stark and wrong against the emptiness. At first, he thought the shapes beneath it were carcasses, deer, maybe cattle, but then one of them moved, just slightly, enough to turn his blood cold. Eli dismounted before his horse fully stopped. He didn't shout, didn't curse. He simply stared, jaw clenched as the truth unfolded in front of him. 5 girls, children, hung upside down like slaughtered game. The sight slammed into him with the weight of every grave he had ever filled, every injustice he had witnessed and swallowed because fighting, it had seemed pointless at the time. But this was different. This was not a distant rumor or a newspaper line he could ignore. This was here, now, and it demanded an answer. He moved fast, knife already in his hand. Years of ranch work had made his movements efficient, deliberate. He cut the first rope, catching the girl as she fell. Lowering her gently to the ground, she gasped, sucking in air like a drowning swimmer pulled from water. One by one, he freed them, laying them in the shade, pouring water carefully between their lips. Speaking softly, though he knew they might not understand his words. His voice was steady, but inside him something burned, an old fury reignited. When Nalin finally opened her eyes and saw him, fear flashed across her face, quickly replaced by confusion. She tried to sit up and cried out as pain shot through her body. Eli raised his hands, palms open, stepping back to show he meant no harm. "Easy," he said, though he knew the word meant little in this moment. "You're safe. They won't hurt you." Safety was a fragile promise in this land. Nalin watched him closely, reading his posture, his eyes, the absence of cruelty in his voice. She had learned early that danger often smiled. But this man did not smile. He looked burdened, like someone carrying more weight than he wanted. Slowly she nodded, trusting not his words but his actions, the way he shielded them from the sun, the way his hands trembled slightly as he worked, the way anger seemed to sit heavy on his shoulders, directed not at them, but at something far beyond the horizon. Eli knew helping them would change everything. Word would spread. Men would talk. Some would call him a traitor, others a fool. The law might come asking questions it had no right to ask. But as he looked at the 5 girls, alive barely, but alive, he knew there was no road back to indifference. He had chosen this the moment he cut the first rope. Whatever came, next he would face it. He loaded them gently onto his wagon, padding the boards with blankets, giving them water, jerky, whatever he had. The journey back to his ranch was slow, careful, each mile a risk. Patrols roamed these lands, armed and eager. Eli kept his rifle within reach, eyes scanning the ridgelines. The girls drifted into uneasy sleep, their bodies exhausted beyond resistance. Nalin stayed awake, watching the horizon, memorizing this man who had appeared out of nowhere and pulled them back from the edge of death. She did not know yet whether he was their salvation or merely a pause before something worse. But for now, the ropes were gone, and the sun no longer pressed directly against their faces. For now, they were alive. As the ranch came into view, modest and weather-beaten, Eli felt the weight of what he had done settle fully onto him. Harboring Apache girls would not be forgiven easily. There would be consequences, violent ones. But as he guided the wagon through the gate, he made himself a silent promise. No matter what came riding down that dusty road, no matter how loud the threats or how many guns pointed his way, he would not hang his conscience upside down and leave it to die. The desert had seen enough of that already.